Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. Welcome back to Kingdomize, the podcast. I'm here with my good friend Ian Green and our friend Mark deHoog. And this is going to be amazing. Ian's known Mark for a billion years. He's going to tell you about that. But we are here today to talk about Solutionaries. That's the series we're in. We thought this series would be, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. We think it's going to end up being about a year by the time we're done, because there's so many people that are actually out there bringing the kingdom in real time to their context. And Mark is a great example of that for sure. Mark's a strategic thinker, spiritual leader. He's passionate about cultivating communities that embody the kingdom of God beyond traditional church models. He's a consultant to multiple local organizations, helping them move towards sustainable impact, kingdom-focused mission. Mark has been Citizen of the Year twice in the last 7 years in Smithers, BC. Like, he's the real deal. Like, he's not just making this stuff up. He's doing it in real time. He's an advocate and an advisor to nonprofits, government agencies for sustainability and leadership culture. He's strategic, practical, hope-filled, and all the stuff he does, bringing relationships, grassroots work, and a steady commitment to seeing people and places restored. Buddy, that's why we want to talk to you. That's amazing.
Yeah, don't believe any of what you hear, what you just heard. Don't believe any of it.
Well, this is all what Ian told me, all of this, so it's got to be true. Yeah. Ian, I'm going to throw to you. Tell us a bit about your relationship with Mark and how you guys know each other.
So we probably go back, it would be almost 30 years. Mark was working for a church in Calgary, First Assembly. I think that's where we first met. He was at the PA to the senior leader there, Ken Gill. I don't know, there was some level of connection there for some time. I started to produce recorded material. It was first cassette tapes, then CDs, then USBs, and Mark's company basically facilitated all of that for me in Canada. They produced it, they shipped it, they did an absolutely flipping brilliant job. But in that, I think we were all both on a trajectory to understand a little more of the kingdom. And then Mark spent some time in the Lower Mainland in British Columbia, and then went back to his hometown in Smithers, British Columbia, and went to probably what was a fairly traditional Pentecostal church. That was not a happy environment for me or for him. But we basically saw that there was a tremendous need in the city, and Mark particularly understood that the way that we were currently doing church, that was not going to be effective in that kind of community. And so probably over about 10 years, I went back and forth to Smithers, meeting with Mark, encouraging the leaders, speaking. Well, he didn't even call it a church. He didn't even call the gathering a church, which was probably about outrageous for church-going people in that community. But they built an authentic community, and he himself just started to make inroads into the community. And I've just admired Mark so much with his tenacity, his entrepreneurial spirit, his ability to multitask, runs numbers of businesses, as well as his work he did in the community, and just impressed by him and absolutely love what he's done over a 10-year period in that city. And I just couldn't wait to get him on this podcast, because he is practical, he's inspirational. Unfortunately, he's not good looking, but hey, you can't have everything, right? So let's go with what we've got.
Thank you.
Amazing. Ian, that's great. Mark, just so you know, every time we're in a room together, Ian has to be the best looking guy in the room. You know that it's big right now to be the smartest guy in the room. Ian never tries to do that, but he always says he's the best looking one. So there you go. That's good.
I'll give him that. Yeah.
So Mark, we're glad you're here. As I've said every time, we want to hear people's stories. We want to know what you do and why. We get that you're a solutionary because you're on the podcast for that. But we want to hear your story, what you do, why. And so tell us a bit about your background, and then we'll come up to what you're doing now in Smithers.
It's great to be here with you, and always a great opportunity to share a little bit about how God asked me to show up in the world that I live in. And really, ultimately, that's what kind of drives it for me is I have a deep desire in my heart to be present in the world that God puts me in, not to be waiting for another day, not to be waiting for Jesus to get us out of here, not to be waiting for someone else to do the job, is just to show up with my talents and my treasure and who I am as a person into the world that I live in. And, I'm deeply passionate about that. I come from, I guess the word would be as a pastor, but recognize that I kind of lived like, Frodo and Sam in Middle Earth. I felt a strong call to ministry, but still had this entrepreneurial edge in business. And if I just did business, I felt like something wasn't quite right for me. And if I just did ministry, something wasn't quite right for me. So I had to find a way to position myself in both worlds. And, really the word is integration, is how do we integrate this all together? Recognizing that there is no such thing as full-time ministry as we would traditionally call it, and there's no such thing as secular work either. It's all belongs to him. It's all his. This is his world, and everything that we do when it's done towards him has an impact for his kingdom. One of the things, as I am a thinker, I notice things, I pick up things, I see patterns in the world, and if we do enough study and recognize that over the last 30 to 40 years, the church in Canada has been on a long-term trending this way. And, lots of people will deny it. They'll say, no, my church is doing great. This is fantastic. But there is this shift that's happening in the Canadian context where the way that church has been done for the last 100 years is no longer working like it has. And if you look across the country, what's happening is people are beginning to consolidate their efforts towards that model. Smaller churches are getting taken into bigger churches, and there's still good things happening there. We're not going to say that's not happening, but there is a shift that's happening. What I've found is that people are still desperately hungry spiritually. They're wanting authentic community. They're wanting to feel like they can make an impact in their community, but they're not wanting to find it through the traditional church model because it can feel performative, and they want to have meaningful impact. And so for me, in my journey, it was like, Lord, you seem to be showing me some things, and I can't just notice and not do something about it. If we see something, we need to do something about it. And so for me, I just said, Lord, I'm here. I want to serve you. I want to do what you ask. Show me what you want in the community that I live in. And so we just started to follow him, and listen to his voice through the process. And so really what I am, if I could define myself, is I'm an integrator. I look at all the things that are in the world around me and I say that can fit here and that can fit here. And these pieces can all come together to integrate for greater impact. That's why I do what I do. It's really ultimately, how can I serve my city to be the best thing that it can be and make it better than what it was when I came. And that's really in my heart. I remember standing in the, we have a farmer's market in our community. And I remember standing, this would be, 15 years ago, standing in the middle of a farmer's market, with my kids in my hand. And, we're kind of looking at all the things. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me. He said, Mark, this is your city. And instantly I had to catch myself because I started to weep. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean, but it was an assignment. He was giving me an assignment to care and to serve the city. And for me, I don't think about pastoring a church. I don't think about leading a business. I think about, how do I impact a city? How does my skills and my talents and my treasure and all that I am impact a city in the greatest way? And really, that's by listening to the city.
There's so many great things you've already said there. So when you talk about that scenario you just explained at the farmer's market, I could take you to the exact spot in my city where that happened and where God said, I want you to pastor the city specifically. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, you're not trained that way. So I totally get what you mean by that. And it's so significant for this dialogue we're having, because until that happens, you will not be an integrator. You will be creating the box that people come to, right? So I want to talk about that just for a minute, because I know First Assembly a little bit. I almost went on staff there. I went on to a similar church on this part of the world at Queensway Cathedral, very similar churches, one in Toronto, one in Calgary. And I know that they can become a bit of a beast, right? They're a machine and you become a cog. So how did you work through the tension of but this is who I am and I can't do it there? Or could you do it there? Like, what was the process for you, Mark, to go, this is who I am. I'm both the church ministry guy and the entrepreneurial guy. What does that look like? So tell us a bit about that piece, because that's significant for almost everyone listening.
Yeah, I think it's there really isn't any training on that. There really isn't anybody that says this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's more of an internal battle that you have to wrestle through. I was really blessed in the season that I was in while at First Assembly, because I began to see a church that was for the city. I was able to be a part of the implementation team in purchasing a hotel to, the Dream Center in Calgary, to be a part of impacting the city in a great way. One of the most impactful moments I had there was actually the High Commissioner from Indonesia came to our Sunday, and he spoke to the church, and he said, I need to say something to the Canadian church. And it impacted me deeply, because he says, I have crossed your country from coast to coast, and I've traveled through cities, and I've seen all of your church buildings and all of the things. And he says, but I need to say this to you. The church has left the fields. And to me, it really impacted me, because it's like, it was true. The church has been really busy about seeking after something, but not the wellness of the city.
Wow.
The church has become very effective at developing impactful programs within itself and having revival or renewal or, those things. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But if they become the end goal, then really we've missed the mark at what we've been sent here to do. And so that was a really impactful, message to me that I still carry this day, is like, I do not want to be a member of a church that has left our assignment and walked away from it. I want to be fully engaged to the best of my ability, and sometimes beyond my ability, to be a part of something greater for the sake of the kingdom.
When you left Calgary and you went to the Lower Mainland, what were you doing there?
Well, I went from the Lower Mainland, or from Calgary to the Lower Mainland. I started there as I was working in the district office to help with youth, and that emerged over the course of about a year and a half into doing some business ventures and launching some kingdom, what were they called? Kingdom ideas. They were just really an attempt at trying something new and trying something different. Those things don't exist anymore. They're gone, but lots of investment and time and energy into trying different things and experimenting. Really,
Yeah.
I'm an experimenter. I'm willing to take risks and try things for the sake of, hey, let's see what happens. Let's learn. And what's the worst that can happen, right? We'll learn some things.
Yeah.
And from that learning, you leverage that into the next thing and the next thing. The biggest lesson that I could say that I've learned is that it's not the big things that make the difference. It's the calculable small things that start to create momentum towards change. So if we're looking for big ideas, I would just say, put those away for now. Start with the smallest idea that you can do today and move forward with that. And in that, you get confidence and momentum towards doing more. The danger of our society, especially in North America, is we're always looking for the next big idea. When the simple idea sitting right before us, the one that we have a nudge about, the one that we have a hunch that it could actually change someone, but it's going to be small, we don't want to do that because it doesn't give us the credit that we want.
Yeah.
And we need to set all that stuff aside and just get our hands dirty.
Buddy, that's so good. If you're able to right now listening, you should stop your car or stop what you're doing or go back and listen to that again. The idea of those small ideas done consistently over 10, 20, 30 years. Mark, you're so right. Everyone wants the big ideas. Look what we did. It's like, nope, just keep showing up. It's the long obedience in the same direction.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I want you
It's
to
funny
talk
that
about
Eugene Peterson is the kind that has the book called that, but it's actually Nietzsche that said that.
I didn't know that till I saw your notes. So that's amazing. I didn't know that. Talk about integration. Like, for those that it's a new word in this context. What does it mean in the context of transformation, integration, and why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, if I could take you for a moment, into my region and throw you in a car and drive for a few hours to where we have a major river, a watershed that moves through this area out to the ocean. And right where that watershed meets the ocean, there is an ecosystem there. And it's where all the fresh water comes into the salt water. And it is full of life. it's a very dangerous place because, the bigger fish come to eat the little fish as they're coming down through the ecosystem into the water. But there's something that happens in the convergence of those waters coming together. And this is what we really miss, I think, many times, is that the kingdom is the same way, right? In the convergence of systems coming together, although those systems might be different in many different ways, they will have some shared components. It is a dangerous place. There are predators in those waters. They might eat you, but there is life that gets sustained, and there's life that happens in the convergence of those things. And I've learned that in the kingdom, it's exactly the same way. When we actually bring people together from different pathways, from different systems, from different ways of seeing, and we identify shared values, and we work together for the betterment of our communities, the kingdom rests there in a significant way. And I've had experience after experience after experience of witnessing this. We bring a simple idea like generosity into community and watch how that shifts the trajectory of people's lives just by them experiencing generosity or sharing in generosity. A simple story that happened to me about a year and a half ago. We had a family lose a home through a fire, and the home was completely destroyed. And I had a person who works at a local doctor's office who knows that we oftentimes will respond in ways like this to help people. And they called me up out of the blue and they said, "Hey, this family, we know them. Is there anything that we could do?" I said, "Give me a few minutes." And I made some quick phone calls and I asked for some people for some help. And we came up with an immediate, it was a couple $1,000s, right? Of just how do we respond to a need like this? And rather than me stepping in the place and saying, "Please give me their name and phone number and we'll deliver the funds to them," I said, "Could you please take this to them and just say this is from a group of people in the community that deeply care and want to just say there's people that see you in your time of need." And they went, "Really? Could I do that?" I said, "Absolutely. Could you do that, please?" So I gave them the check and they delivered it. And afterwards, they said, they were weeping. They said, "I have never experienced anything like that in my life." That was so powerful to me that I could actually be a part of that process. Anytime you want to do anything like that again, I'm here and I'm ready to help, right? This is just a person in the community. They're not connected to our faith community in any way. They're just a person in the community, but they were impacted so deeply by that generosity that was flowing anonymously from community to a person in need.
Yeah.
And so that's when you start to do that kind of thing, it's the convergence of people and systems together, the integration. People experience the goodness of God, whether they're the receiver or the deliverer, right? The messenger. They're just bringing a message of hope. And we actually I don't want to be the purveyor of hope in every situation. I want other people to bring that hope as well. And so finding ways to allow people to participate in that is something that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Love that. So how do you do that? How do you build that connection with people? How do you make that work for your scenario?
Well, I think what we have an organization that's called Proton Foundation. We're a foundation that's a charity. The word proton, means first, and really ultimately one of the things in my heart and as a strategy is that if there's a need in our community, I want our phone number to be the first thing that people think of. Can we call so-and-so? Can we call Proton and see if they can help in any way? And so not to be the first as in look at us, but as if there's someone who can help, these guys will be able to do it. And so we just take that approach and showing up in many different ways and in different committees and different elements in the city to say, "Hey, we're just here. We want to help. How can we help?" In one particular situation, I showed up and said, "Hey, is there any way I can help?" And they told me to get lost. "No, we don't want your help. Go away." But I kept showing up.
Yeah.
And I kept showing up and saying, I'm not here to prove anything. I'm not here. I don't have an agenda other than I want to help. And I see that you guys are doing good work. So I want to link up with you and support your work. And if I kept showing up and they eventually said, "Okay, well, let's give this guy a try and see what he does." That's a really critical component, is that we have to understand when trust gets placed upon us, we have to treat it very carefully, and it cannot become our agenda. It must be, how do I serve? How do I help according to how they see it, the need to be met?
Love that. The way I banner that, Mark, is love God, love people, don't be an idiot. So I wanna turn the corner into our dialogue about Reformation, because we always do on the Solutionary series. Clearly, you've gone from just believing stuff to acting it out. You've already told a few stories on that, but you've got so many great thoughts here and so many stories, and the ecosystem of transformation that you've created is amazing, and I want people to hear about that. So let's start with the talk about Reformation. Why not just have a nice service, or why not just do what most Christians do? Why are you going after the city in such a way? What's the deal with Reformation for you?
Well, I think it's really understanding, I guess I'll start with a theological perspective. I'm not a theologian, but, it's our understanding of what is the church for? If the church is to be just waiting for Jesus to come back and get us out of here, then why didn't he just get us out of here a long time ago? And understanding that the church has a purpose. And Matthew chapter 16, Jesus kind of laid down the framework pretty strongly for his disciples on, this is what I intend, right? And he didn't use churchy language in the time. He actually was a little offensive to his Jewish disciples, and kind of, he hawked the Roman term and dropped it in there. And he says, you guys are my sent out ones. You are the ones who are called out. We don't often ask that. We like that word, right? Ecclesia. As the church, we go, oh, we're the called out ones. But have we ever thought about what we're called to? We're called out from something, but what are we called to? And, Jesus really dials into that, and he kind of says, you build the kingdom and I'll take care of the church. And many times what we do is we define the kingdom from the lens of the church, where Jesus is defining the church from the lens of the kingdom. And those are very different perspectives.
Just say that again for those at the back.
Yeah. We oftentimes look at the kingdom through the lens of the church.
Right.
And what that can do is it gets us see if I can do that correct. It gets us very focused into a very small view of the world.
Right.
But when we can look through the kingdom at the eyes of the church, it ignites a whole bunch of different things for us, and it aligns us. And so there's lots of people, they love renewal and they love revival. And I think those things are a part of the puzzle, but they're not the end game. And we have created them the end game, and I've been in the services, I've been in the prayer meetings where we're praying for revival. And I just sometimes wonder, God's going, okay, and then what? You have revival, and then what?
Yeah.
Because it actually needs to change something. What's actually going to change? And I just go, well, in my deep desire to find what an expression of a reformational belief system would look like, I remember wrestling it through, and how does it look like in a church body? And I remember one day the Holy Spirit just saying to me, Mark, I'm not, and this is for me, okay? I'm not speaking this for the Canadian church. This is not a prophetic word for everybody. This is how he speaks to me. And I know that I need to carry this in my own life, how I am to build, right? So it might be good for somebody out there listening to, and if you can take this and use it, you can use it. But he just said to me, I am not interested in a retrofit.
Right.
And I went, what's a retrofit? I don't know what that, I had to actually look it up. You know what I mean? I had to go, okay, what's a retrofit? A retrofit is taking something new, attaching it onto something old. And I went, oh, that significantly shifted my thinking. For my life, he's saying, I want you to build something different and function in a different way. And so, we don't put the force of our energy into our Sunday mornings. We put the force of our energy into how our community is made better.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
100%. So good. So let's step into this dialogue about what you're calling a transformation ecosystem. And so Let's start there with your core idea, and then you've got a few points. Let's go into this because it's just so good.
Yeah. So for me, what does it look like boots on the ground? That's the question that I always have to ask. How do we actually take people from an idea into reality? And how do you lead a community? I'm not talking about a church community. How do you lead a whole community towards some kind of significant transformational change? And there's a few components of it that have been highlighted for me. First of all is, how do we engage people? And, I would say there's four main pieces to a transformational ecosystem that if we don't pay attention to all of them, we will actually only get parts of it, or we'll burn ourselves out. So finding the way of matching these together and functioning together. One of the key ones is social action. And I need to be really clear on the language of this. It's not social activism, right? There's a difference between social action, love in action, and social activism, which is, we're going to fight the systems and we're going to pull them down. That's not what I'm talking about. The social action is simply, how do we show up and love people in a real, tangible way? And we bring people into that process so they can do the same, right? This is not about putting a gate on, well, this is only for church people, or this is only for other, certain people that we allow through. This is for anybody who can help others and has a desire to help others. We want to build capacity for that. Something that happens when we get people reaching out to help others in whatever capacity they have, something shifts inside them and they become a better version of themselves. And so social action is about tapping into that. How can we help people help people? Really, if you want to kind of talk about the leadership term, it's citizen action. How do we help people become better citizens in their communities? So we're stripping away the spiritualized language of it and saying, how do you become a better citizen? What can we do to help that? And of course, providing opportunities to serve, to give, becoming a champion of serving and volunteering in the community. And that's one of the efforts that we've just done, is that we want to be champions of volunteerism. So we serve in lots of different capacities. We help events, we help serve in different areas. We'll pick up garbage, we'll stack chairs. We're not looking for the platform. We're looking to help the people who are on the platform do what they need to do.
Yeah.
And so developing, social action is actually a key component. And without it, we lack the equity in a community.
Mm.
What I have discovered many times is that sometimes we have this attitude in the church that we're here to show people what to do and give us the opportunity and we'll show everybody how it's done, rather than just go, I'm just here to serve. I don't have an opinion about this. I just want to help. And you tell me what I need to do. And if it's picking up garbage, I will do that with a smile on my face and do it to the best of my ability. So social action is one component. Another component is what I call social enterprise. It's businesses that exist for the betterment of the community. Sometimes what happens in a business is it can get into the place where it functions to serve itself. We get so concerned about profits. We get so concerned about how do we make sure that we're making enough money so that I have extra money for my holiday and for this and for that. And for me, social enterprise is really about having a business that, yes, it's not losing money, but it's building for the betterment of community. So there's a few businesses that I have that there's staff, they have jobs, they care for people in the community, and the people that they care for receive the care. And all of those dynamics, every piece is leveraged to the betterment of the community. Now, social enterprise doesn't always, oh yeah, go ahead, Ian.
So, Mark, I know that one of the times when I visited you, I felt this was really impressive in that people picked up the spirit of who you are, and what Proton was trying to achieve. And they started whether, I don't know if it was home care, but it was providing meals for people who were outside of the social net because they could actually afford to have meals delivered for them. And someone had started a business, I think, in that area. And they actually saw it as a way of serving the community, creating employment, being a blessing. And I know that when they left, they kind of gave the business to Proton or to yourself. I can't remember. Like, explain a little bit about that business, because I thought that was quite unique.
Yeah, well, that particular business was providing home support for seniors. And of course, in our society, and in the context of where we're at, there's these baby boomers, and there's many of them, and they are beginning to get older and beginning to age into the system, and the system doesn't have all the means to support them. Right. And so this business was built on how do we honor these people who really, many of our communities have been built on the backs of these people, and now they're being neglected and ignored and forgotten. And so just really trying to build a business around how do we support them, but not only just support them, but be an extension of their hands so they can live in their homes as long as they possibly can before they go into some kind of long-term care. And, that business was started by a woman here in Smithers. And when she left, yes, she gave the business over to us. And we've just continued that business on for, I think we're 11 years now. We've provided that care in community for seniors. And it's become a pretty critical component of integration. When we think about it, the health authority now will call us and say, hey, we have this senior who needs help with this. Are you guys able to support them here? And we become a part of the conversation and supporting people long-term in their homes, aging in place, because it's the healthiest way to age in a community. And for me, it's about honor. The seniors in our communities, really, they've done so much, and now they are dishonored by being neglected. And so we honor them by extending care and providing what they need. We don't come in and tell them what they should have. We come in and say, how can we support you and what can we do? There's a kind of a theory that we use. It's like, as long as it's safe and as long as it's legal, we're here to help, right? And it takes us into a whole variety of areas.
Mark, I think I knew some of the background of that story, but that's great for our listeners to hear that. I think that's so. I mean, anybody who's run a business know that it's not a straight line, right? So I think it's sometimes, you have to recruit staff, you have to manage staff. It's, you're doing that as well as living life, having a family, running a community of like, how did you juggle all the how did you juggle all those balls together?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple layers to that. Of course, when someone comes and says, "Hey, here's my business. Can you take it over?" Because you're actually behind why this business exists.
Yeah.
You're actually one of the drivers to why we do this. So we feel like you would be a really good fit to take this on and lead it. And of course, I'm not a person who is wired to say no. And I don't mean that from a lack of boundaries. I mean that from, this is a really good idea. And this has got the heart of God in it. And it needs to continue on and be sustained. So I'm going to say yes to that. And we're going to figure it out. And, sometimes what we do is I call it the small group in your mind, right? We listen too much to the small group in our mind that convinces us not to do things. Sometimes we just need to say, hey, I need you all to be quiet for a second, because this is actually a really good thing. And it's going to be a risk and it's going to be hard, but I know if it's part of my assignment, then we will figure it out and God will help me. And so that's kind of how that happened. And, in that process, we're relationally connected to people. And, we've been able to, initially it was very hard because I'm managing all kinds of different elements of it and staffing and that. But over time, we were able to pass on some of that management and I just became overseer. And so you need to get that, Ian. But the benefit is that just finding ways to see good things happen, it comes at a cost, but you just keep doing it. And so there are multiple businesses that we have done in the community to support good causes and to support things and to build capacity. And we just believe that social enterprise is a key component of that. The other component is in social enterprise, it's not always about starting a business or driving a business or managing a business, sometimes about being in partnership with good businesses. And I have really been blessed in this community by some businesses who say, hey, we see the work that you do. If you ever have need of something, you call us and we'll help.
Right.
And I've had beautiful opportunities of people just donate, equipment or building supplies or all kinds of stuff because we're engaged in doing something and helping people. And they know that we're not carrying an agenda other than this place is a better place. And they get behind that. So social action, social enterprise. I think there's another key component is spiritual community. We need to have a vibrant, engaged community of faith that can bring that vertical dynamic of spiritual community to God through all of that. So there is power in spiritual community. And I think that's where, in many ways, we have become disconnected in our understanding of ecclesiology as we go, the power's all right here. We have it all. And we don't think about integration because we become so focused on that one thing. And I believe it's powerful and I believe it's important and I believe we can't get to transformation if we don't have it. And of course, all of these things, social action, social enterprise, and spiritual community, all leverage themselves together towards transformation. And when I use the word transformation, what I mean is those generational issues that exist in the seedbed of every community that we can never seem to solve because they're too complex and they're too hard and they're too difficult. Those are the things that we can begin to tackle when we have alignment through those three other areas. We're not looking for mass recognition. We're not looking to make giant impact. We're just looking to say, what is it when we bring all these things together that we can do? And so in our community, I have felt that I've been in this community now for 15 years. It's my home community, so actually 40 years. But, some people call it Mark's second coming because I came back to this community 15 years ago. But since we've been back here, we've just been working and working and working and showing up in whatever need we get asked to do. Some of those things might seem small and menial, but we're just saying, yes, we're going to do that because that's what a community needs. And over that time, we have grown in our capacity. And we have grown in our ability to say, these problems are not that complex, not because they're not complex, but because our capacity to see those problems has grown. So, 15 years ago, when somebody would say, hey, I need you to organize 250 hours of volunteer time through the course of a weekend, I'd go, oh my, that's too much. I can't do that. Now I'm like, has he got anything else for me? Can I take on more responsibility? Is there anything else that I can help you with? It's the growing capacity that we have. We're now tackling significant issues, and not that we are tackling, like a Mark deHoog or Proton Foundation is not the answer, but we're at the table now. We've been able to participate in seeing a 20 unit building built for young moms who have had to miss school because now they have a child and they can't complete their high school or they can't complete their college education because they've now gone into this mode of parenting. And what that does is it creates generational poverty, a generation where they just don't have opportunity. Well, we've been able to help facilitate now the building of this where there's care. And there's a community of people that can provide that so that a young person can say, I can finish my high school, I can get my college degree, I can continue on and break that level of generational poverty. Well, that doesn't happen without long-term showing up and growing in it, right? We've been also able to sit at the table with some very significant Indigenous conversations on breaking. This community that I live in displaced a whole community of Indigenous people when the community was building. Said, you can't be here anymore, you need to leave. Well, that leaves a wound for generations, and we're not out of it, but we're in the conversation and we're navigating through it and finding ways to walk together in a good way for the future of all the people in this community. And so those things, that's where transformation starts to meet. And it doesn't happen by jumping to the table and going, okay, I'm here to transform Smithers, I'm here to transform the city that I'm in. It happens by showing up a little bit at a time. So social action without enterprise ends up as burnout. Enterprise without spiritual community ends up hollow. Spiritual community without action is disconnected and irrelevant. See, if we have no integration of all of these things, we will not get to transformation. So to me, Brian, you asked the question, let's talk about integration. To me, this is a fundamental component. Integration is absolutely important for us to get to where we need to go. And it means that we have to kind of walk into spaces that we don't know what we're doing. We don't know why we're there, other than I'm here to serve and I'm here to help. What can I do? Yeah. And let our communities tell us how to show up, right?
Yeah. I know. You had talked about the Dream Center you built in Calgary, and you and I have talked in the past about the Dream Center in LA. And Matthew Barnett, the guy that has led that, he's got a saying. He says, whoever shows up and stays the longest wins, right? Which I think we found the same thing, right? It's like, we're not showing up for us. We're showing up for the sake of the community, for the sake of those here, because the kingdom does have answers for the problems of the real world, right? And there are solutions that we can get to. So I love how you worded all of that, Mark. We're really, really good.
There's a component to that I just would like to speak to for anybody listening. When we are getting to the hard work of transformation, we have to check our ego out. There are things that I have started in this community, and it would be nice to be able to take credit for, but I have to hand those off to someone else to finish it, or they do the work and they get the credit, and they get all the praise and they get all the glory, and that's okay, right? But if we're really trying to go after transformation, we have to be willing to let go of ego and be invisible, right? And what I have noticed for too many churches, and I would go as far as church leaders and even some business leaders, is our ego gets in the way and we want credit and we want to be recognized and we want to have, one of the hardest things for me is I do not want Citizen of the Year award. I don't want it. They approach me and say, hey, Mark, you've been nominated. I said, can you find someone else, please? Right? I really don't need that recognition. And I don't want that recognition. And that's why they come back to me and say, and that's why you're getting it, because that's what it's about, right? And it's like, please don't do this to me. But really, for us, we have to move into the place of being willing to hand off as much as we possibly can to others to carry on the work of transformation and give them the credit for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you said a word on the way by there. You said the word participating. And I think that allows us to stay in the right spot, right? Because it's not like I'm bringing everything to the table, so you guys watch me do this. And it's not like they're doing it or they're doing it. It's like, if we all bring the piece to the puzzle we have and participate together, then something good will continually keep happening, right? And I think that's so important. So, Mark, I would like you to speak to the future. I would like you to speak to, like, why do you keep doing this? Like, 15 years now, the second coming of Mark, 40 years in Smithers, and other communities I know you're passionate about. Like, why are you optimistic to keep doing this regarding transformation, regarding what God's put in your heart?
Well, I think sometimes it's wiring. I am a creative, and I don't actually, it costs me nothing to criticize, right? I could tell you all the problems that we have in our world, right? But what does that cost me? You might go, wow, Mark, that's really insightful. Not only are you insightful, you're really good looking too. It's amazing, right? But what does that cost me? Creativity costs something. And I feel that, but it's worth it every second that we bring our creative thoughts to our communities and say, this is for you, this is for your betterment. And that's why I keep showing up, is that I believe, I would put it this way. This is the small group in my mind. I'm going to let you inside to the small group in my mind. I believe either I'm delusional, right? And I've got some harebrained crazy idea that it's never going to do anything, or I've seen the impact for 15 years and I might be onto something.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that no one else is onto something, because I'm finding that there are more people emerging across different places all over the world who are saying, we got to find a different way to get to kingdom life. And I'm seeing it, and it's actually exciting me. But what we have to find is that no one's written a book on this yet, right? There's a few people that are trying to, and that we have to find each other and keep going at what we're going after, because I think God is in it. He's doing something. And so for me, it's like, I have to keep finding, I have to keep going, I have to keep learning, because there's something in here that he wants to show us collectively.
Excellent.
So that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. Creation costs us something, but it's worth it every single time.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful.
Ian, last thoughts, my friend.
Mark, this is very helpful, very inspiring, very motivating. I mean, I would say that there's enough in this podcast where even if people take one thing away, do the little thing that you can do. Forget about the big thing that you can't do. I think that's my big takeaway. My big takeaway in life is start where you are. Do what's in your hands. Make a movement going forward. And I think you have demonstrated that. You've gone out of your comfort zone, gone into numbers of different areas. And I think that's not only commendable, it's inspirational. It gives us all hope. It's not the big guy. It's the little guy doing the little thing will actually end up having a big impact. So thanks for your contribution today. This has been absolutely outstanding. And we're gonna have to come back, because there's too many stories we've not heard yet.
Excellent. So, Mark, we want to thank you. Fantastic. And looking forward to having more of these dialogues. I love everything you said. It was so good. And I'm with Ian. If people can just grab something and do something with it, I think we've been educated way beyond our obedience for too long. So grab something and do it. And if you want to get a hold of Mark, Proton Foundation is the foundation he's talking about out of Smithers, BC, across Canada. Little known fact there, Norm, is that Ian Green started the Proton Foundation, a century ago or something, Ian? Is that what it was? So anyway, thanks for listening today. We have been just really enjoying Mark today and what he's been doing in Smithers, and his inspiration to all of us to get an idea from God, get that counsel inside your head working together, not too long, but then go and do something. Find other people that think your way. Go have a coffee with a few people and throw ideas around and see what comes of it, and then do something with it. So you can be a solutionary in your scenario, and you should be, because the kingdom looks like something in real time in your time. So go ahead and do that. And thanks for listening today to the Solutionaries, and we'll be back next week with another guest. So we'll see you then. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.